Welcome to the Daily Breaking News Channel YouTube channel. The elite paratrooper forces of Russia's 31st Air Guard Brigade were undoubtedly annihilated in Ukraine, according to findings released 2 days ago by the Institute for the Study of War and referenced by the Moscow media. Russia has never fully explained these casualties, although the initial strike killed at least 5 dozen elite paratroopers. According to the confessions of the elite unit of Russia's 31st Guard Brigade, paratroopers seized by the Ukrainian armed forces, there are now around 2 battalion tactical groups surviving from the elite unit of Russia's 31st Guards. They are spearheading the Severedonetsic offensive. Approximately 80% of the city was destroyed during the Russian takeover of Serettanetsik, which began a week ago. But thanks to the severetinetsic deployment of the multinational legion, Ukrainian military forces have retaken control of at least half of the city. In this case, it is uncertain what remains of Russia's 31st Guards Air Assault Brigade, which is on the front lines, but Ukraine has nearly entirely destroyed this Russian unit, which has been stationed in the Volga River city of Ulyanovsk since 1993. The 31st Air Assault Brigade was formed. The 31st Air Assault Brigade, one of the Russian Army's few elite task formations, most likely devoted roughly 2,000 personnel to the conflict in Ukraine. Elite. Despite heavy casualties at Hostomel, airborne forces were at the vanguard of the siege of Kyiv, causing the city to suffer the worst losses. It is possible that it will pass. At the conclusion of 102 days, the 31st Air Assault Brigade, which was the head of Russia's elite special forces and was highly trusted, had become an almost all-slain burial brigade. This elite special unit's remains are currently being redeployed in the Izium area, 120 kilometers south of Kharkiv. Following the combat around Kyiv, the remains of the 31st Air Assault Brigade's 2 remaining tactical groups were most likely unified in one region to the east. According to reports, these units were in the vanguard of the recent Russian army invasion of Severetannetsik, playing a significant part in the conquered regions and in the previous 2 days. It's unknown if much of this special force survived the Ukrainian army's counterattack to regain Severetanetsik. After being redeployed following a hard hit in Hostomel and Kyiv, the 31st Air Assault Brigade appears to be complaining of low morale and insufficient food and equipment supplies. At the same time, this elite force has lost the majority of its comrades, and they clearly see that the fight is over for them. So, how were Russia's elite regiments and brigades destroyed? What do Russian army reports and confessions tell us? On the morning of February 24, hundreds of paratroopers from Russia's 31st Guard Air Assault Brigade boarded helicopters destined for a training area in western Belarus on the morning of February 24 at a remote airport on the Belarus-Ukraine border. According to the troops, everything would go smoothly and they would train at the training field before returning. But before they took off, senior officials informed them that they were at war with Ukraine and would be traveling to Ukraine rather than the training site in Grodno. The squad flew into Ukraine's airspace from the Hostomel airfield near the city of Kyiv. This episode is described by a special unit paratrooper who was subsequently captured by Ukrainian military forces as follows. People became gray, especially as we were shooting into the air 102 days after the unexpected attack on Hostomel. Russia's conflict with Ukraine has grown from this quick maneuver to grind artillery duels and creeping Russian assaults is now concentrated in the country's east. Yes, Russia is still making tiny gains in the east, but these gains appear to be insignificant in comparison to losses in other areas. The 31st Air Assault Brigade, which had previously engaged in the Second Chechen War and the 2008 Russian-Georgian conflict, sustained high losses in Ukraine, as well as many of the larger logistical and morale issues that frequently set an example of an ineffective Russian operation. This elite unit was completely destroyed during the Ukrainian conflict. The force that arrived at Hostomel Airport on February 24 quickly began capturing the runways, hangars, and airport facilities, but Ukraine stood firm against this Russian seizure of the airport, preventing the Kremlin from grabbing its airspace. In reality, when the invading force had taken the airfield to the rear of the opposing lines, this type of attack was a popular tactic on battlefields. They would fly a massive supply to the region, and the conquest would begin from inside. If the attack had been successful, Russia would have used Hamel's long runway to fly huge, ill-conceived transport planes with extra soldiers and supplies, but this was a terribly ill-conceived concept. On February 24, Russia believed it had paralyzed Ukraine's defenses by bombarding Ukrainian air defense systems and power facilities. These were direct attacks that were said to be successful. The threat presented by the surviving Ukrainian air defense systems, on the other hand, prohibited Russian transport planes from going to Hamel Airport. The Russian land troops attempted a different strategy. This time, they devised a ground operation strategy and began to prepare for the forces they expected to arrive from Belarus. The units of the 31st Air Assault Brigade were observed carrying crates of munitions and wearing white armbands that strengthened the airport's perimeter in the early days of the invasion. Then Ponomarev, a special elite unit of the 31st Air Assault Brigade seized by Ukrainian armed forces, narrated the rest of the story. The airport staff were expecting additional equipment and reinforcements within 24 hours. It was unavoidable. These supplies, however, were quite late. Ponomarev claims that the wait lasts for days, and that after 3 days, they are still the sole Russian unit at the airport, despite the fact that the airport is not safe. Russian tanks and armored vehicles have crossed into northern Ukraine and are en route to Kyiv. This will go down in history as the Russian army's worst strategic blunder, because the kilometer-long column of Russian tanks and armored vehicles has become an obvious target of Ukrainian airstrikes and anti-tank missiles, notwithstanding the convoy's sluggish progress. Many tank and armored vehicle convoys on their route to Kyiv were destroyed by the Ukrainian army, and Russia was unable to advance with its kilometers-long convoy. Ponomarev stated in his testimony that after a few days, they suddenly returned to their senses due to Ukrainian artillery bombardment. During the 2-hour raid, scores of elite special forces personnel were killed, and a substantial amount of equipment was destroyed. Ponomarev described the occurrence as nothing left. There isn't even a turret remaining. Russia attempted to conceal all of these attacks and casualties, even from the soldiers closest to them. As a result, it was never quite feasible to get complete official statistics on the disappearances. Ponomarev, on the other hand, claims that at least 60 troops were killed in this region, persuaded that seizing the airport was impossible. With these casualties, the Russian commanders opted to withdraw from the Hamel airfield, even if the mistake seemed to have been corrected. Everything has gone too far. Many analysts believe that the invasion-oriented Russian army attack that began in Ukraine 102 days ago was a conflict in which superior Russian troops would smash the Ukrainian government and armed forces in 48 to 72 hours. This, however, did not occur. Indeed, after the conflict, with the amazing performance of the Ukrainian armed forces, the Russian army began to be remembered with a considerably worse image than before the conflict. The Russian military was no longer regarded as Putin's iron fist, but as a heap of outdated armored scrap. 20 years ago, Putin grabbed the leadership of Russia and rolled up his sleeves to make the Russian army the most modern and powerful in the world. This topic received a lot of attention, and military studies were prioritized. Putin had just one goal: to become a force comparable to the previous Soviet Union, maybe establishing a larger army before the conflict began. News of the Russian army's sophisticated technology reached people all around the world. The Russian army's armaments were hailed, yet few of these vaunted cutting-edge weapons made their way into Ukraine. It is disheartening when the intended impact does not occur. The Russians were dispatched to Ukraine not only with modern weaponry, but also with elite special units from the Russian army. These elite fighters were expected to gain a significant strategic advantage in the Ukrainian conflict. However, looking back, we can see that most of the top Russian forces were destroyed in the fight that we left 102 days ago. In this analysis, we considered the high casualties of Russia's 31st Guards Air Assault Brigade. We previously reported on the terrible casualties and hits inflicted by Ukraine's Spetsnaz and VDV special forces. Even though the number of casualties is small, the quality of those who died is very high, and the Russian army will not be able to replace them for many years.